So Lisa,
Salam.
let's get right into it. We're going to be talking about Shank. Can you tell us the official Sanskrit name for this and what it is?
Sure, of course. So Shank is the short version for Prakshalan, which is uh, basically an ancient yogic technique to deep cleanse the entire system.
Right. We've just entered into spring. There's a natural instinct to go deep in terms of our cleansing, and spring cleaning as well is associated. This desire to, really cleanse ourselves out, with the seasons. So how is this connected to the ancient yogic practice, and how it's relevant to?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the yogis of old, they were very interested in having a stable body and mind, technically, to be able to perform their practices, the more advanced meditation practices, for example. So Prakshalan can be seen as a method that both purifies the body very concretely by purifying the entire digestive tract, but it also has profound effects on the psyche and like the whole human being as a multidimensional being. So one could say for example, when we move into spring, there may be different sorts of ailments that come about from mucus, excess mucus in the body, or people suffer flu-like symptoms, or maybe just you feel like once in a while it's nice to do a full kind of reset. Then the Prakshalan is an excellent aid for that.
Right. So this could also be seen as a spiritual practice, the constant need to cleanse with seasons or certain times of the year. How effective is this technique in comparison maybe to other techniques that are done for cleansing?
Well, I wouldn't even compare this, frankly, with so-called detox methods as a whole, because generally when we talk about detox in, common media, or the common understanding, I think nowadays, is you take some kind of a supplement, or you go on a juice diet or something like that to purify your system. And I'm not going to say anything bad about those, but Prakshalan belongs in a different category in it, as it's actually a very concrete cleansing method in that it involves only salt water. So it's not something you add into the body, but rather you just purify the body. So there's nothing harsh, nothing, so to say, foreign or unnatural about it. I'm not saying carrot juice is unnatural, but this is just like like you said, spring cleaning. You can wash your house with water in the same way you can wash your body with water as well.
Right. And what are some of the effects of this, according to, what people who practice this?
Well, one could say that anything that has to do with the digestive tract would be generally relieved or improved if there is any disturbances there. The big Prakshalan is also followed by a special diet, which is very mild and conducive for just balancing the whole body mind. So one could see people getting relief from various kind of indigestion or heartburn. There could be constipation, or, for example, other things that have to do with the digestive tract could be skin issues. Many people report also that their senses feel much sharpened, because when you clear out everything that's kind of dulling down the system, then it's almost like you can say you revert back into an earlier kind of state of more clear perception.
Right. So you could even say that, because I've read that, for example, individuals experiencing brain fog, headaches, even migraines, there's a substantial effect on that to clear up the system, and then you don't really see these symptoms appearing.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're getting also nowadays a much more clear understanding of what is actually going on in the gut, and we don't know much of it yet, but it seems that there's a tremendous effect on the activities of the microbiome in the gut. That's probably one of the things that happen. I cannot say that backed up by science, but because of the diet and because of the cleansing and the effects thereof, there must be something going on with our so-called second or third brain, which resides in the digestive system.
Awesome. If not, maybe even the first brain.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned small shank and a big shank, right? So do you want to just tell us about that? What's the difference between the two? You said the latter has a diet associated with it and it goes on for a certain number of days. Exactly. Please tell us a bit more.
So technically there's not a big difference in the actual method. The small Shank Prakshalan, that just involves a fewer amount of glasses of water, or just like a smaller amount of water that you take in. And the larger Shank Prakshalan contains a larger amount of water that you drink. But because of the larger amount that you take during the so-called complete Shank Prakshalan, it clears the digestive tract to the point where you have to have a diet to kind of rebuild the just your system again, because the larger one is something I would say to be done maybe once a year, a few times a year if you're having some specific issues, whereas the small one can be seen as something that you can do as maintenance throughout the year. So with the larger one, there's the diet that you mentioned as well. So that's a 10-day diet that is basically very nutritious and easy to digest, and that's meant to both purify and keep the system in a very sort of stable state, not agitating it.
Sure. And the duration for both of them would be about how long? Like how much time does one need to invest to do the small, for example?
Well, it's a good question because it also depends on experience. I say if you know the small one, if you've become very familiar with it, you can do it within easily, I would say, 20 minutes or something like that. Then the effect of that might be felt out during the day. And of course, carrying into the week that comes after, if you're doing it weekly, let's say. But that is something that doesn't take a long time. Now, in the beginning, of course, when you learn the technique, that might be requiring some more time because there's several different elements that build up this practice. The big one, however, I would always recommend to reserve an entire day, not because it's going to take you the entire day, but because when you do such a profound cleansing, you're going to, feel that something has been happening during that day. So you might want to just take the day off and rest afterwards, and just to not have to do any obligations that, would be burdening you unnecessarily.
Right. So now for what we're going to be offering through the BAAB, we're going to be having the small shank initially, and that's going to be through your guidance. What is the benefit of having someone guide you or facilitate this process as opposed to kind of doing it on your own? I know for sure that support is one thing. We had a lot of individuals who were down for this, and even though it may seem simple, just having a guide, someone to oversee, someone to ask questions, someone to check in with, that's definitely a major benefit. And so you would be the guide for the small shank. So, I mean, what would you recommend in terms of the process done with a guide?
Well, I mean, you mentioned already a lot of the points why a guide is necessary, but of course people are different, and I know that some places do teach Shank without guidance, and from personal experience I've seen that go well, and I've seen that go not so well. So what happens when you have a guide is you have someone who can actually check in and see that you're first of all doing the technique correctly, because when done incorrectly, this is a powerful technique. So it's not something that should just be done in a half-assed way. It's like actually something that's specifically designed to follow certain routines. So when you have a guide, you can assure that you have that specific set that has been tested to work. That's the first thing. And I would say the second big benefit when it comes to the shank particularly, and this may apply a bit more to the large one, to the complete one, and that's sometimes when we do something that is unfamiliar to us, we haven't done it before, there may be times when we feel like maybe taking a break or doing something that's not, so to say, part of the technique, because it may be, you know, taking a while to complete. Then you have someone who's actually there to encourage you and to keep you going, which would be to your benefit, because also this is part of the technique. It keeps a certain tempo. Also someone to encourage you if you feel like, you know, it's stalling or something like that. So I'd say personally, I would not recommend someone doing the Shank Prakshalan on their own for the first times. First do it in a setting where you have support.
Right. So we've got this offered now through the BAAB. It's going to be regular, a monthly for the small shank. And as for the big shank, we're going to have that in certain times of the year. What we recommend is anyone who's listening, who's interested, who feels that they would like to join a community of females who are going to be on this path of monthly cleansing through this gentle yet highly effective cleansing routine, dates back to the ancients, because I mean, this is over 5,000-year-old sort of practice. Very strengthening to one's spiritual practice, to one's awareness, just the whole inner outer sort of process. Then you can connect with us by registering through the BAAB, and we've got our courses up and we're good to go. And we're going to be starting soon.
To reply to any questions regarding this as well, so feel free to reach out and ask.
In fact, we can even have a taster session or a Q&A. And if anyone's interested, then they can comment or message us. We're going to have that as well, Zoom prior to beginning. And that's it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking forward.